Mr. Xu, great to have you.
It's my great honor as well.
So we would like to hear your priorities at this year's air show.
Actually, this year is a quite different year from last couple of years, where we are in a global backdrop of geopolitical uncertainty and the supply chain uncertainty as well. So this is a very good moment, as a very good platform for all the people in all the aviation ecosystem as stakeholders to sitting together to have a dialogue, exchange, talk about the future growth, talk about how to execution and how to deliver those future growth in a quality way, and also how to have the anticipation and the readaptation to the new normality.
And we'll talk about the challenges you mentioned later. So I would like to first talk about Airbus and China. China is one of the most important markets for Airbus. And also it is not only a producer, it is also a manufacturer for Airbus. There are 2 assembly lines already in Tianjin. So what is your strategy in China exactly now?
You're right. Airbus is a very important strategic market for Airbus in the last decades. And according to our global market forecast, it will continue to be the 20% of the future market for the next 20 years. So strategically important market for us. Second thing is that you're right, it's not only a market, it's really where Airbus has a major industrial footprint in China, for China, and where this demonstrate a lot of industrial resilience and competitiveness. So that is really a very important market for all of us. And also a very important industrial setup which can help Airbus to navigate through all the supply chain disruptions and try to catch up on the industrial ramp-up target, which is a very ambitious one, which we need to deliver 75 single-aisle aircraft per month around the year 27. So that's the Tianjin final assembly line, and this line 2 extension is a really important part of this industrial ramp-up for Airbus.
And does it mean that you produce more from China if you want to meet the target of 75?
Definitely. As of today, we have a mature line of line 1, which has based on the rate 6 at this moment, and we will double our capacity in the future with the line 2.
And are you planning to have probably the 3rd assembly line in the near future because you have a big backlog?
This, as of today, China has around 20% of the global single-aisle market, and Airbus has overall 10 lines of the single-aisle. That means 2 lines in China means 20% of the market and 20% of the industrial capacity. We have the prediction which shows that even taking into consideration the high-speed train network competition, China will still have a very solid growth in the next 20 years in terms of fleet growth and fleet replacement. We are talking about 8,800 new aircraft need to be delivered to this single country market in the next 20 years. That's if you look at today's China, the fleet size is number 2 in the world. In the 2030s, China will be the number 1 fleet size as a single country in the world. And we have a strong belief that in the next 20 years, the flight per capita in China will be tripled at the end of the 20 years later.
And China has now entered a fleet recycle renew, we know. And how many of them are expected to be produced from the China factory?
The situation is that when we talk about introduce new aircraft into the China market, it's partially for the replacement of the aged fleet, is partially, and the most part of it is for the fleet expansion still. China is not like those very matured market. It's still a high growth market. And if you look at the Tianjin final assembly line, as of today, half of the China market is served by the Tianjin final assembly line. But Tianjin final assembly line, interestingly, is also not only delivered to the Chinese customer. 25% of the aircraft is delivered to the non-Chinese customer. But in the future, with 2 lines in China, I think the line share of the Chinese Chinese airline demand will be fit or met by the Chinese deliver from Tianjin.
And speaking of the Tianjin assembly lines, when the first line was launched back in 2008, you personally were involved in that, in the introduction of Airbus to China, because you used to work for the Tianjin government and later you joined Airbus, so you know more about the Tianjin assembly lines than anyone else, I think. So based on your observation from over the past 20 years, what do you think has changed regarding China's manufacturing of airplanes?
I think it's true that I have been starting from 2005 working in the Chinese government to collaborate with Airbus to develop the Tianjin final assembly line, which is the first Airbus final assembly line outside of Europe. It's a very bold strategical decision. And that has demonstrated to be a very successful strategic decision for both sides. From Airbus side, the market share in the 2005 at that time is about 18%. And within 10 years after the establishment of the final assembly line in Tianjin, we achieved half of the China market. On the China side, with the Tianjin final assembly line, there are quite a lot of supply chain further developed locally to support the final assembly line, which helps accelerate the maturity development of the China aviation ecosystem. So this is a win-win. If you ask me about what is the difference from now compared with 20 years ago, one thing is very obvious, that we are very much convinced and admire the speed of China in terms of innovation. And we see quite some innovation sectors in China has been growing so fast. It has a kind of one of the top in the world. We are thinking about whether we can proactively integrate and leverage those China innovation strengths into Airbus system to help Airbus develop future products with the good level of competitiveness. This is why we set up an innovation center in Suzhou, which help us to define the future technology, future partner, and future applications. That is very successful.
Speaking of that innovation in China, I know Airbus is now partnering with UBTECH. You want to use some humanoid robots on the assembly line. What more can you tell us about that? Are we going to use some robots now to make up for the labor shortfall?
We are working very actively to involve new automation, including robot and digitalization into our design, our manufacturing operation phase, and even into our future support and service maintenance area, after sales services and maintenance area. This is really something we think will be the major transformation of the aviation sector in the future. Of course, China is very active in both the robotic and AI and digital technologies. We are working, we are explore the potential partners in China to work with. The first robot we buy was only the first test case. we will continue to explore other partnerships in China. I hope that we can have some good robot in China and make it a good business case, operation success, then we can duplicate it in the European final assembly lines. So
right.
China could be a test lab
So
of those new technologies.
China is only the testing ground. If it works, you would like to apply that to the European manufacturers and factories.
Yes.
To solve, do you think that will help solve the biggest challenge you are facing right now, that is backlog?
I think automation definitely will improve the quality of the products and also improve the operation efficiency. That will help the future industrial ramp-up on both the supply side and on the OEM side as well.
So the biggest challenge for Airbus or Boeing, the airplane makers now globally, is not about demand, it's about supply. And global supply chain disruptions have severely impacted this industry, apparently. So how is this impacting your business and what is your way out?
You are right. The situation today is that on both the wide body and the narrow body market, we see a strong, robust, solid growth in the market. On the other side, with the complexity of the supply chain, even with the geopolitical uncertainty, today if you look at the delivery of Airbus last year, it's still lower than the peak, pre-COVID peak. So it's true that we have accumulated a huge number of backlog. It's a problem. Even some people say it's a nice problem to have, but it's really a challenging problem to have, where Airbus is working very closely with the whole supply chain, and also Airbus is really put a lot of investment internally, also try to support this industrial ramp-up. Tianjin Final Assembly Line 2 is a very important example that we put further investment in China to prepare for the industrial ramp-up.
I also want to talk about your competition against Boeing. So when you became the CEO of Airbus China in 2018, it was about the time that Boeing 737 MAX was grounded worldwide, and China was one of the first countries to ground those planes. How do you think that incident changed the competitive landscape in the Chinese market? And personally, what did you say to your staff when that happened?
I think one of the things we can learn from that accident or crisis is really safety is a paramount priority of our industry, where safety is really the operation license of this industry. We need to re-enhance the safety culture in everywhere, in the supply chain, in ourselves, and also to support our customer in terms of safety and quality operation. And if you talk about the competition, I think the competition is not only from Boeing, it's not only from the newcomer, indigenous newcomer Comac, it's also coming in this market, China market, it's also coming from the extensive expansion of high-speed train system. But for me, for Airbus, we all believe that competition will bring value for our customer, for passengers. A healthy competition will be beneficial for all of us in the long run. But the most important thing is really to put customer in the center of the heart.
And personally, do you think 2018 was a turning point for Airbus?
In terms
of market share?
No, actually, we have already achieved.
But do you think that has reinforced your position in the Chinese market because of the accidents?
I would say in a different way. At 2015, about 10 years after Airbus decided to set up the final assembly line in China, at that time, Airbus has already grown up to have the 50% of the market share in China. Okay. And you're talking about after that we have the crisis, of the safety crisis, we have the COVID, we have many other things. We have the supply chain disruption all over the world, which impact not only us, it's also impact our competitors as well. And it's still a big dynamic. So our target is very clear. We want to maintain a dominance on the market. That which cannot take it for granted, that a lot of job need to be done in order to maintain that dominant position. So here, this is why we set up new lines in China. This is why we put a lot of enormous efforts and resources to invest in China on the supply chain side. This is also why we put a lot of resources to develop after-sales services in China to really support our customer in terms of a safe flight and flight efficiency.
And domestically, we see the emergence of COMAC. You mentioned that just now. COMAC is that the initial stage. So you are talking about reaching the target of 75 planes a month, but COMAC is still not producing at large scale. Do you see COMAC as a competitor in China, or probably in the near future?
For sure, COMAC is a serious competitor in China market, and even in the future, possibly in the overseas market. And we have to treat them very seriously. Yeah. But on the other side, I think with the Airbus development in China, with the COMAC development in China, one good thing is that the China supply chain system will grow very fast. And that brings a new opportunity also for us, where we can think about how to leverage the China supply chain and to manage the resilience, to manage the diversity of the supply chain, to really de-risk the supply chain. That is, as I said, is one of the hot issues at this moment in this industry.
In your analysis, when do you think COMAC could be a serious challenge to Airbus?
It's already a serious challenge.
It's already?
Yes, it's a serious challenge to Airbus.
But Airbus can produce over 70 a month for Airbus, but COMAC can produce about 50 a year.
I think that if you look at the current situation, I think it's not only about how many aircraft you produce, it's about the reliability of the aircraft, it's about the customer satisfaction about the aircraft, passenger satisfaction about the aircraft. I think the aircraft is at a good level, and it's a serious competition, and we treat it very seriously.
Yeah, I want to talk about geopolitical tensions. We know there are some trade frictions between China and the European Union. How much do you think that is impacting your business operation in China, and what is your strategy?
I think, we all observe quite a lot of up and down in the geopolitical relationship between China-Europe, China-US, which has definitely impact on our business. But the good thing is that we see between Europe and China, both sides agree that the constructive dialogue between both sides will beneficial mutually. That is a good sign. And I think one thing we should do is really invite the regulators from both sides to look at our industry as a very unique industry, which is very internationalized, which connected culture to culture, people to people, place to place, where the uniqueness will requires the both government from both sides to support this industry, strategic industry. And also one thing from my understanding that aviation, if you look at the Europe side and China side, is very much complementary to each other. This is talking about industrial capability. When we talk about R&D, when we talk about innovation, when we talk about market, a lot of things are very much complementary to each other. Therefore, keeping a manageable relationship between Europe and China, it's very much at the heart of the aviation, and we benefit a lot in the past from amicable political relationship between Europe and China, and we understand the importance, and we really, when I talk with my Chinese partners, both sides have a strong willingness and also be very much convinced mutually benefit relationship will really help our future investment and growth in China market. To put it into a nutshell, I think the geopolitical complexity is a new normal. And we need to keep observation, keep anticipation, and the real adaptation as the keywords of the future.